Well, good morning and welcome back, everybody. And so, we're very excited for the next panel. And it's interesting because when people think of foreign direct investment, traditionally they think of exporters. They think of Samsung, they think of Foxconn. And so as we talk about the China Plus One strategy, a lot of that manufacturing is coming into Vietnam. Yet for this panel, we're actually taking a very different approach. We've been getting a lot of questions from investors about the health of the economy. We've been getting a lot of questions about foreign companies that are investing because of the emerging middle class. And so we've asked two senior executives from foreign companies that are really investing in the domestic economy to share why they're doing that, the lessons learned from their home countries, and we'll have a great panel. So we're joined by Chanitr, a senior executive from the Central Group, and Joseph from Keppel Land. And so we'll start here. Joseph, some people, certainly if you're from Singapore, probably know Keppel very well, but maybe for others that don't, maybe explain who Keppel is.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Well, it's a pleasure here. I actually was right back there enjoying the presentation by Paul and Michael. Yeah. Well, just introduce Keppel. I think a lot of people know Keppel as real estate developers. In fact, Keppel is a lot more than that. We are asset managers with deep operating capabilities that spans in three main segments, namely connectivities, whereby we own a telco in Singapore. We are into data centers as well. We are laying the deep sea cable from US to Singapore. These are little known fact. We are also in infrastructure. We are building one of the bigger waste-to-energy plant in Hong Kong. We are into, we own Keppel Sager, against waste-to-energy and other green energy assets. And of course, here in Keppel, in Vietnam. Keppel has in Vietnam for over 30 years. You may know some of the buildings that we have put in place. We have contributed to the skyline, including Saigon Center, where Takashima is. We are the single largest shareholders for Empire City. We built Stellar Place, Leicester City, etc. So over the last 30 years, we have grown from 5 staff to now 500 over staff, and we have a total investment of 3.6 billion, and that number is continue to grow. Yeah, so that's a nutshell of what Keppel is. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And so Chanit, for those of us that have visited Thailand, and we have several Thai investors here, they know Central Group very well. It may be not as well known in Vietnam because you don't actually use the Central brand. And so maybe think about who is Central Group in Thailand and what does it look like in Vietnam?
Sorry, I didn't bring any slide because there's too much to introduce in one slide. So it's very hard. But the group is a 80+ years old family business. And we have a 3 listed company under the Thai exchange, the property developer CPN, the Centara, which is Centel, and the retail, which is the CRC. So the group invests in Thailand, in Europe, and for many of us Europeans, you probably see many of our assets from London down to Italy, from Holland. And in Vietnam, we are very fortunate to be able to participate in the growth of the domestic spending for the last 10 plus 15 years. With the acquisition of the Big C from Casino, and everything's on that. So you see now the brand name we use is Go Mall. So if you see the Go Mall and all the Tops supermarket, all those represents the groups starting to invest and been doing it for the last 10 plus years.
Interesting. So
you probably see a lot of our presence in Thailand. So wherever you go, you see the big shopping mall, which is us.
Interesting. So, as I mentioned in the start, most of the, quote, FDI, when they think of it, they think of manufacturers, and they think of low wages, and they think of quality of workforce. Each of your companies focus on the domestic market. What attracts you to Vietnam's domestic market specifically?
The growth in the domestic spending and the youth factor is definitely there. When we look at the acquisition, those years was maybe 8-9 years ago, you see the projection of the GDP is this way. So it's no-brainer that the domestic spending is there. and the youth factor is coming out into the workforce, the FDI is coming in. So that's definitely there's a short period of success where if you don't catch this wave, you're too late for it. So that is a simple, very simple mathematics to enter the market. And of course, as a workforce, that's the key, because the young workforce, and we, in Thailand, I think we are probably the largest private employer with over 100,000 in Thailand. So that could easily be replicated for this market, because the market here is, well, 100 million, we are 70 million, so it's much bigger than Thailand. So the growth opportunity is there, definitely.
And do you think of, oftentimes people say Vietnam is X amount of years behind something. Internally, when you're having these central group, strategy discussions, do you think like that?
I think each country, each culture has different way of looking at it. The cultures of, you see many of the workforce, if you work here, after work, they go to English class. I mean, that's unheard of for us in Thailand, sad to say, but it's the determinations and the entrepreneurship that is still there in Vietnam. And that's more spending, okay? That equates to more spending. But if you look at as an investor looking into the Vietnam stock exchange, it not necessarily equates the GDP growth to the stock market, so it's still stock selection. But from the investors, in terms of looking in the domestic spending, that's an easily no-brainer, is the culture of the people that will represent for future spending in the future. And they all want to get, accumulate wealth, spend more, get a better life, and convenience is the key. So as a retailer, how do you provide that service? So it's still a big question for us to be able to provide those services to the consumer.
And so, Joseph, over to you. What specifically attracts Keppel to Vietnam?
Well, I guess the elephant in the room is that there's a lot of things going well for Vietnam. Just now, Paul and Michael has pointed out, and even our friend here, they say that we have a young population, educated, entrepreneurial, and on top of that, we have a government that's spending money on infrastructure. As we know, that infrastructure is usually proxy to economic growth. But on the other hand, is that, again, I like to quote Paul. Paul had a wonderful presentation out there, that the urbanization rate in Vietnam is still relatively low. And there's a lot of shortage in a lot of things. Like, for example, in the CBD, we still short of a lot of good grade A building. And of course, the Vietnamese have their own Vietnamese dream, have their own aspirations for better medical care, better education, better housing. This is something they wanted to. And as we see the expansion of the middle class, we see that there's a lot of demand generated. And in fact, nowadays, you see that you go overseas, go to Singapore, you see a lot of Vietnamese traveling. So that is another sign of the expanding middle class. And we have, on the one hand, demand is there. On the other hand, we have a supply that is insufficient. So you put the two together, it's not difficult to see the opportunity and the potential here in Vietnam. Yeah.
So you and I were talking right before we came onto the stage about kind of the challenges that were going on in real estate, and you were sharing a conversation that you had with one of your colleagues about the timing. How do you think about the challenges in the real estate market as it relates to Keppel's long-term plan?
Well, as you have pointed out, it's a long-term plan. I guess real estate is never a short-term game. Yeah? So you can't expect to reap if you don't start to sow. So, but the important thing is that whatever you sow, is the soil fertile enough for growth? And again, as a lot of experts in this room has pointed out, the potential, the soil in Vietnam is good. And it is sowing the seed at the right time. But if you don't start sowing the seed today, yeah, by the time it comes for harvest, when all the recovery signs is already on the wall, then you will kick yourself silly. why don't we invest a little bit earlier? Yeah, so that's how I feel. But again, I will say that one of the reasons why I'm here is that I'm here to listen to Hui, who is going to tell us about the real estate market. And so please don't ask me any questions. Reserve those questions for Hui to answer for you. Thank you. Hui, over to you later on. Right?
That's a good one. That's a good one.
We'll defer everything to the next panelist. That's not fair. And so, you know, I almost want to stick with you just because of that, but we won't. And so, you know, China, you had actually mentioned earlier, you have a very interesting background. And so even though you work for a family, you have kind of a more corporate background. Maybe share what your previous role was and then kind of how you think about that as it relates to kind of Vietnam.
My past life worked for the Stock Exchange of Thailand. I was very fortunate to be able to participate during the wave that we increased the liquidity, overtook and became #1 in the ASEAN. But it all comes from the understanding that the domestic market is key. Okay, the listing of the new companies into the market, the participation of the investor who understand the market, and of course the practice of the corporate governance that our Security Exchange Commission was very forceful. Still work in progress, but it's better in terms of reporting, in terms of the standardizations of the accountings and all that. So I was very fortunate to see that. And I look at Vietnam and how you know, the exchange system that you have working at Ho Chi Minh, it's the donation we gave out 20, 30 years ago. And it's still, the liquidity is there, the system is there. And we definitely see the delay effect, but it will come. The market will explode for sure because of the opportunities that you have in terms of the companies, in terms of the earning. Now, it still have to work out a bit of the, the frontier market, emerging market, those things. Once you be able to get access to the institutional money, the pre-funding, the net settlement, all those stuff has to be, all the kinks have to be worked out. But I'm a firm believer that the market will grow. I used to do all the road shows for the SET 10 years ago, so that was my job. So if you look at the numbers, the economics number, and you see what Michael was talking about earlier with the potential growth, it's there. But as again I mentioned, GDP growth is not equate to the Vietnam index. So I think it's something that we have to understand. The same thing when I talk about the Thai exchange. It is not the same. Because if you look at the Thai corporates been doing, it's because of the 12 years ago, the great flood we have changed everything. So you look at the 40% of the income is now coming from abroad. It's not coming from domestic. But that's how we, in Thailand, we maintain the growth because we understand the diversification. But for here, it's still the hundred millions domestic spending. If you are able to put all that together, you have a great opportunity here. Sure.
And now, because Joseph didn't want to ask a question, we're going to go back to him directly on this one. So, despite challenges in the real estate market, you talked about continued confidence. Are there certain regulations or policies that have been enacted over the past year that you think have been good in terms of creating stability? And are there any regulations or policies that you think need to be enacted to provide further stability as well?
Well, I guess putting aside all the short-term difficulties, I guess one of the longer-term issues that I see is the thing on sustainability, and that's also highlighted as a key risk. In fact, that's the first key risk that highlighted in Paul's slide. Actually, me and Paul didn't actually coordinate on this, but I say that we share the same thinking, that Vietnam will be a country that is worst affected by climate change. And in fact, you look at what happens in Mekong Delta, there is saltwater intrusion. Keppel has been one of the companies that actually providing water filtration systems to the people there. And there will be severe erosion that cause the collapse of houses into a river. These are all real. In fact, I think from one of the statistics I read is that Vietnam will be one of the 5th country most affected by climate change. And the evidence is already today, we see it already. Now, according to the Green Building Councils, is that 40% of the greenhouse gas is generated by real estate activities. Of this 40%, roughly 30% are embodied carbon, and that is generated when we construct or decommission a building, and the 70% is actually based on how we operate the building, because a modern building is very energy consuming. So back in Singapore, what we did is that we retrofitted a 20-year-old commercial buildings. We put in place some of the technologies that improve the sustainability. So we achieved two things. First, by prolonging the useful life of the building, I do not incur the embodied carbon to tear it down and to rebuild again. And by putting in more efficient cooling systems, water towers, and all those things, I reduce the usage of electricity. So, and because of that, actually, we got a very encouraging gesture from the Building and Construction Authority of Singapore, whereby because we meet certain sustainability requirements, we are giving some cash subsidy. Now, earlier this year, when I was invited to speak at a conference hosted by the Ministry of Construction, actually, I was suggesting this for the consideration of the Vietnamese government, of the relevant authorities. You see, in order to meet our 2050 net zero target, I think real estate have a part to play. And we know that putting in all these sustainable features require a lot more capital. And of course, we need to be partnerships with the government, and one way that the government can help private sectors to bring in greener building is that perhaps provide us, the developers, with a little bit more GFA, or extend the land use rights for a couple of years so that it helps the developers to invest this feature and have a little bit more time or more space to recover that expenses without causing a dent in the government's coffer. So there's one regulations that we hope that the government, after considerations, can in some way implement it, which I think that it will be good for not only the real estate industry, but it will also be overall blessings to the whole entire environment as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And what I really appreciate about that answer is oftentimes, and we've talked about this, and Michael's talked about this, is when we talk about FDI, so many people think that the answer is about wages, or the answer is about currency, or global minimum tax, or something like that. And your answer was very nuanced, that it was really about, in this particular case, forward-looking policy about incentivizing sustainable development, as opposed to limiting wage growth, or something that kind of most people think of as the differentiating factor. Are there, other than Singapore, are there other countries that have actually done this? So I know that there's certain buildings that we've been involved with that are LEED, I think, certified. Are there other examples from either Singapore or others that we should look to implement?
Well, I guess there's a lot of standards coming out from US, Europe. I believe the Chinese is developing their own system, and I think Chinese also facing. I think the issues of climate change is not a Singapore problem. It's not just a Vietnam problem. It's a global problem, and everybody is doing it in their own way. But I guess there's a common goal: is how do you reduce that greenhouse gas, and how do we have works towards better environments on the whole. Yeah.
Interesting. And this was not intentionally going down the ESG road, but I think what it shows is that as companies are coming into Vietnam, it's an important consideration. So, Chanitr, you seem to be nodding. As you think about your group's investments.
I didn't touch the ESG part. I just only talk about the corporate governance. Yeah. I'm sure that Joseph will touch on the sustainability, because it's key. This is something we all have to live with, that the global investors are looking at it. So everybody have to practice it somehow.
As you think about it, so you're coming in much more, call it consumer-facing businesses. As you think about 2023 and in 2022, we've heard about a slowdown in consumer. How do you think about that in the context, and what is your projection for 24, 25? Do you just accept that there's a slowdown, or do you say, this is a great time, we're a strong company, we have a huge foundation, we're going to look at this as an opportunity to grow?
We've definitely been looking to grow. We're still expanding. Hopefully, we can open three new Go Mall next year. Okay, and the consumer after COVID has changed a bit. So we all have to recognize the consumer preference in terms of the better quality of life, better health care. So they're definitely looking for that. So we all have to adapt in terms of how we provide our mixed tenants for the consumer, for the customer. So, I mean, the quality of life here, I think post-COVID, every consumer in everywhere in the world is definitely looking for health care and better for themselves. So that is something the theme is there. And of course, the tourism, the hospitality, you know, for the Thai market, we are very fortunate with the new government, you know, visa-free for the Chinese. Now that our numbers is probably back up to 100% pre-COVID now. It was 95% last year. I think there's a lot of Chinese tourists coming to Thailand. So we are, you know, getting there. And I believe the same trend in terms of the healthcare. They're all coming for the Thai massage, for the good healthcare, for the hospitals. And we have all that infrastructure set up. And hope to see the same thing for Vietnam.
And do you think, so when I think of Central, it's consumer, like you said, it's the malls. Are there other businesses that you're looking to get into that you're not currently involved in Vietnam? Because I was just
telling our friends just now before I came in that if you want to see how the new mall of the Central Group will look like, it's not in Bangkok at the moment. It's in Ubon Ratchathani. We just launched the Ubon Ratchathani Central Group, the mall, where you have the mall, you have the Centara, you have the condominium, the real estate property, you have the large conference hall centers. So it's a big complex. That's the new model. If you happen to want to see what it looks like, you have to go up to Ubon Ratchathani to see. That's the new model that will look. And we hope to replicate something similar. We used to have bits and pieces, whether in Lat Phrao or bits and pieces in Udon Thani. So now the full set, that would be something to look forward to. Because now slowly we are getting into more property developer.
And is that possible in Ho Chi Minh City or Hanoi? Or do you think about doing that in the satellite cities?
We'll always look for every opportunities in countries similar to Thailand, like in Vietnam, for sure.
Interesting. And so we'll go here. So, you know, I'll stay with you for a quick second. So when you think about consumer trends, you know, one of the things is consumer trends can be finicky. And you just talked about how post-COVID, people's preferences have changed.
Healthcare, consumer trend, another one, internet. There's cheaper, faster delivery and all that stuff. But you can see that people probably get sick of doing everything online, so everything is going to offline. And on those online is now servicing offline. All the offline is now trying to implement more online. So it's an omni-channel mix between two. And you can see more of those coming. Okay? Of course, for food in Thailand, you see the trend, and probably the same is the delivery is still there. Okay? People are still doing delivery. So the incremental income that used to be the supplemental income during COVID now is becoming 20%, 10% of business for many of the restaurants. And people still go out, and you see everything is all jam-packed on dinners and lunch. So people is coming back to the mall, okay? But at the same time, the internet, the e-commerce business model is still there. So the trend is definitely, you know, the online people is now opening up offline. That's for sure. So you can see the mix of the two in terms of the omni-channel.
So Joseph, for you, so you think about, you know, one of the things Chanitr said, and I think we talked about this in our prep call as well, is it's hard to say anything is like something else 20 years ago because each place has their own culture, their own development plan, but still there's lessons learned. And so is there anything that you've done in Vietnam that you did in Singapore that either worked even better than you thought, or you kind of replicated something and you're like, you know what, this is maybe where we should have forged a different path?
Well, just now, as I said, that I think Vietnam and Singapore have its own differences. Yeah. And one thing that Vietnam have is that you have a large economic hinterlands, huge populations, whereas Singapore is a city-state. Our population is a fraction of what we have in Vietnam. But culturally, we are quite similar. But somehow or the other, I feel that the Vietnamese have a higher propensity to spend, yeah, especially the younger generations. That's why I thought that the Central Group would be very good having retail business here, yeah, and coupled with a shortage of retail mall in this place. But for us, I think Keppel, we actually make sustainability not just a part of our business, but actually make sustainability our business. So what we hope that we can bring to Vietnam is what we did for Keppel Bay Tower. How do we rejuvenate older buildings to extend the useful life and to make it more energy efficient? So that's something that we have tried it out in Singapore. It works, and of course, technology doesn't froze in time. We hope that we can bring the experience here and perhaps couple with some new technology that we learn from the other countries to make, because Vietnam have a lot of old stock of buildings which we think we can actually apply these solutions. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just curious, is this something that consumers are asking for, or is it something that you've identified as just a better way of doing business?
Okay, sometimes you don't wait for your customers to tell you what they want, you know. So back 14 years ago, when we built Estella Heights, the condominium development in Quan Hai, so District 2, we actually make it as the first condominium properties to get green mark endorsement. Now, at that time, a lot of people was asking us that why do you need to spend the extra money to make it a green mark building? You know, does your consumers appreciate it? Are you going to pay you the extra dollars for it? Yeah. So that was real questions that we were faced with just 14 years ago, when not many people here talk about sustainabilities. But we actually anticipate that in time to come, this will be the thing. And we feel that these are the right things to do. So besides having profit and revenue and all those things, we believe in actually doing the right things that you return to society what you have taken from it. Yeah. So yeah, we don't wait till we anticipate what the changes. And so a lot of times until you see the writing on the wall, maybe you are just a tad too late.
You know, it is interesting because we talked about if someone's telling you they want it, you really wish you had started 2 years ago in terms of building it or investing in it. When you think about this, you know, obviously, I think vis-a-vis Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam have more similarities in terms of certainly the population. Are there things that the Central Group has done here that either you wish you had started earlier, or that maybe now you're saying that didn't work or that did work, and how are you pivoting if at A?
You know, I very hard to say or answer on that one. You know, you always wish to do it everything earlier. You wish you see that the opportunity is there. So I think we have to adapt to the consumer needs. But you see the trends and you see the economics data, it's growing for sure. And with all the FDI that it will be coming in, and I'm a believer of the FDI because that's how Thailand grew for 30 years, is all FDI. But now it's the value chain, whether it's the low workforce or is it in the more innovative, more robotics in manufacturing. So how do we supplement and being able to produce enough engineers to be able to service that? That's how we did the automotive industry, is the 500,000 strong skilled labor workforce, which is all the Japanese, the Americans, the Europeans. It's not the big three, it's big 15 that is doing the one-ton pickup truck. How do we build those supply chain in Thailand? So something will happen along the way here eventually.
You know, thank you. And it's interesting because as people think about the longer term trends, and in Vietnam, if you read various studies, they talk about e-commerce growing at 28% and the fastest growth, now granted off a low base, and yet here we are talking to someone that's developing new malls. And how do you reconcile, you know, is that part of also the Vietnamese culture where they want to congregate, and you know, you think that malls is something that's kind of under-resourced today?
Well, there's room to grow, for definitely. If you want, I'm sorry for our Malaysian friends, but if you want to go to Malaysia, that's where a lot of malls, a lot more malls than you need. So that's in Malaysia, but in terms of the density, but in terms of the Vietnamese context, there's still plenty to go.
Well, just to supplement it, I remember reading some statistics that the per capita retail space, that means total retail space divided by the populations, Vietnam is one of the lowest compared to Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, and elsewhere. So with 100 million populations, with a very low per capita retail space, and also an expanding middle class where people have more spending power, I think there's a lot going for the retail business in Vietnam. Okay, I'm speaking on his behalf.
Thank you.
No, but we think about it as what we'll call modern retail, and so the evolution of kind of that cash business, mom and pop's stores in the neighborhood. We see it with pharmacies, we see it with consumer products companies, and now with the emerging middle class going to the malls, because it's also we call it the experience economy, where people want to go out.
Which is the experience economy is the key, because the consumer trends that you see is in Thailand. You know how the Thai consumers, we go to the malls, we concerts, live concerts, all this lifestyle will change, and I foresee the similarity will be happening in Vietnam anyway. People looking for better quality of life. So concert is one thing. You see a lot of those happening in Thailand for the last 10, 20 years. And if there's a delay effect, I'm sure that will happen here in Vietnam. Okay, all the activities. You can see that all the beach concerts are excellent. All the marathon, all the beach concert that's going on. And that's part of the attractions to the tourism economy that we provide. So, and it's how it's how the Vietnamese tourism economy starting to understand the repeat customer is more important than the new coming customer. And that's the thing that we have cracked in Thailand for many years. It's the repeat customer. It's the ability of the Vietnamese tourism industry to be able to crack that. Once they crack that, it will come even more.
And so how do you think about that? So do you actually, are there any metrics when you're looking at entering a new market? Are there certain metrics you look at, as Paul showed, certain cities over 250,000 or GDP per capita? Are there certain metrics you look for as you're making an investment?
100 million is no-brainer,
yeah.
Okay? Versus 16 for Cambodia, 7 for Laos. Myanmar, I would not say anything about it, but the numbers is there. So the investment, you'll be able to recoup your investment is the IRR, the NPV, and then you can figure it out. 100 million consumer.
And then Joseph, for you, as you think about the next 3 to 5 years, are you developing more malls like Takashimaya or Saigon Center, or will it be more residential properties? What do you think the biggest opportunity is for your group?
Well, for us, we feel that in Vietnam, there's all-round opportunities. I feel that there is, although again, one of the slides, I think it's from Michael, they're saying that there's no overbuilding in residential. In fact, I think over the last few years, there's an undersupply and there's a latent demand waiting to actually jump opportunity when the launch start to flow again. So residential is one area that's still growth, and retail, we own Saigon Centers, where one of the biggest retail mall in Ho Chi Minh City. We have Estella Place, that is a suburban mall in District 2. And recently, we signed something in Hanoi as well. So that's one area that we are going to develop as well. And also in Saigon Centers, we also have an office building. And there's really a critical shortage of grade A building in the CBD area. So if you ask me, I think there is opportunities in all these areas. And yeah, thank you.
So we were joking, so is now the time, even for you or for both of you, is it time to invest, or is this the time to retrench and wait for something that's more clear?
Well, we believe that good deals are made in bad times. Yeah, so I think we are still investing. Yeah, and yeah, I feel that sometimes, you see, real estate is a funny thing. If you find the house that you really liked, okay, seize the day, buy it, because you say that, okay, I'll wait for another couple of years when the market bottom out. And lo and behold, by the time you come there, that house that you really love or that ability may not be available. Yeah. So real estate is unique in that sense. I think if you find a right investments and that you've done your calculations and you think that this is something that you really want to do it, I think you may just seize the day and just go for it. Because if you wait, that building may not await for you. Yeah.
Janet, is that the same philosophy for your firm?
I don't need to paraphrase him, so I'll let him speak. It's good.
Same? All right. So what we've done is we've done, and not based on your performance yet this morning, just to be clear, but we have saved 10 minutes for questions. And so I truly hope that someone will actually raise their hand instead of being shy and not wait for our colleague from NLG for all the questions. Thank you, Kevin. Hold on one second. Someone bring a microphone.
Thank you, the two gentlemen, for your fantastic insights. Corruption, bit of a sensitive topic. Not much was mentioned this morning. As a foreign investor and as you build your projects or property, how have you found that to be an issue, and how does it compare perhaps in the regional context as you have invested in other places?
Speaking as a Thai, I think there's nothing.
I'm not sure if I want to add to that, but could you, by the way, I appreciate it, and I'll re-ask it for you, Kevin, as an absolute question, not a relative question. How's that?
Well, this, as a Thai, so what's new?
Right. Okay, so it's not worse than Thailand, let's say.
No comment.
Interesting, and I'll add one comment on a serious note. And we created this little Vietnam introduction book, which you have, and there's a slide in there which talks about Vietnam is one of the few countries that actually moved up significantly in the Economist Transparency Index. And so we do get questions from time to time about the anti-corruption and whether or not that was just code for politically motivated things. And the reality was, if people do something stupid, they're going to get arrested. And unlike America, where you basically pay a fine and then you actually continue to do what you do, in Vietnam, you go to prison and they sell your assets. And so I think it's very encouraging to see that Vietnam has actually moved up the Transparency Index, I think after Singapore and Malaysia. Vietnam is third. So without being kind of tongue-in-cheek, there actually is progress on that. I think it's fair to say it's not done.
Question a little bit differently. Yeah. In the context of China, for example, I would argue that the anti-corruption campaign has some ways actually slowed down the economy, because people used to doing things a certain way, and if you press the brake on certain thing too hard, it actually slows down the entire machinery. And I guess maybe my question is, with the progress toward anti-corruption, do you think there's any concern that it could actually make things more difficult because people are, less of a better word, less motivated to do certain things?
Well, for Singapore, anti-corruption has always been very high on our agenda. Since our founding father, Mr. Lee Kuan Yew, he took a very hard stand on corruptions. Now, take a look at Singapore today. After we take a hard stand on corruptions, you think Singapore is better off or worse off? I can only say that we are trading for short-term pain for long-term good. Yes, the short-term pain is there, but I believe that eventually it will pay dividends, and especially so for foreign investors like us that's in this room. Do I answer your questions?
Yes. Thank you very much.
Hi, I wanted to hear your view on the rising household debt. Whether are you concerned that the rising household debt will hinder domestic consumption here?
As in compared to how it is in Bangkok, I don't think that's significant.
Right.
Thai person asking.
Yeah,
Thai
I know.
person.
That's why I say you look at Thailand, our household debt is ballooning,
Right.
and we're still cooking in terms of domestic spending.
Right. Thanks.
So your answer briefly is
So
it will
not
continue. Okay.
Hi. For the past 10 years, you see a lot of the foreign developers not acquiring new land banks because as the local developers have gotten bigger and stronger in both the residential and and also the retail space. With the current environment, do you expect the foreign developers, with more capital to have better access going forward? Because, the past several years, people like Hong Kong Land have left the market because they couldn't find new sites. And, and in terms of just, you mentioned that real estate is a long-term game earlier. I mean, Sports City has been around for, 20 years, and it's still, where is that going, right? So, I mean, there's a lot of challenges. And do you see this next phase as an opportunity to acquire new sites? Thank you.
Well, I guess now that if you read in the paper, earlier this year we just teamed up with a local developer, Kang Dian, to acquire another piece of land in District 2. I think other developers like Gamuda they have also entered the market and at District 2 and they buy a piece of land. I think what you said about this foreign investors avoiding the market, I think not exactly true because I just raised 2 examples of people coming in and buy.
Not avoiding the market because you want to, but because it's become a local game. Right, the past 10 years, because the local developers have gotten bigger and stronger, so it's very hard to do a joint venture unless there's some sort of dislocation like right now in the past year.
Then perhaps you may want to partner with people like us, Keppel, which have been here for 30 years. So we are half local and half international. Yeah, we can talk about this during lunch. Yeah.
You have a spicy panelist here.
Good answer. Yeah, it's but I think what it also says, and I think this was also a very, until the end, very still humble response, is that last year or early this year, great deals are made in bad times, and so those were 2 examples of crisis as opportunity where you had $200 million. Was it with Kang Dian? Was it a bigger deal than that?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, and then there were some significant things where local developers were trying to shore up their balance sheets, and so I think there were probably still some deals to be made later this year, early next year as well. So,
well, I guess it depends on opportunities that's available, but I can say that under current situations, many developers, many local developers, they are more willing to share their pie with other investors who has the capital. So I think if you believe in Vietnam, if you wanted to build a presence in Vietnam, if you want to capitalize on all those good things that we talk about by the earlier presenters, I think it's about time now that we seriously look into it because there is a lot more opportunities available. Until the recovery sign is very clearly written in the wall, I guess the local developers may have less incentive to share their goodies with the other investors.
thank you. All right, do we have time for one more question if there is one?
Actually, that gentleman is being unfair. I say that all the real estate questions reserved for Hui.
Well, we can ask him too.
Excuse me, one last question. So, we've been noticing that in terms of the residential and buyer confidence in Vietnam has been on the weak side since last quarter. I think the first half of this year has been fairly soft, right? What's your takes on the outlook for the residential markets in big markets like Ho Chi Minh and Hanoi for next year's?
That will come out in the next presentation.
He's good. I will, but I promise you, I will ask that question first to Hui from a local residential real estate developer. At least you now know what's coming. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time and insights.